Karolyn. I'm about to cut a name out of fondant and paint it gold, and I wanted to show you how I do that. I did a video before on how I cut a name out of fondant, but I've been doing it a little differently recently, and I just want to show you how I changed my little technique. So, what you want to do, print out the name in the font that you want, the size that you want, with the correct spelling, roll out some gold or light yellowed colored fondant, and if you want to see how I do this process, then just keep on watching. To start off, I have fondant rolled out really thin. This is like about 1/8 of an inch. What I do, like always, I mix my fondant with a little bit of Tylose powder. The Tylose powder helps the fondant to dry hard, so it's easier to work with. And as always, I have my X-Acto knife and my Dresden tool, which is my favorite tool. I got this in a tool kit, and I don't think they make it anymore, but I will link a Dresden tool below. It will be something that basically the same thing. It'll just look a little different. And I'm gonna need a paintbrush. I have some water. So now I take the name Michelle, and before, I was taking a needle tool and poking holes all around to trace. What I do now is I'm just going to trace basically this name onto the fondant so there's an impression underneath it. You want to make sure that you roll this out and let it set for 10 minutes so it can stiffen up a little bit. So lay your piece of paper on top, take the pointy end of your Dresden tool, and I'm not going to trace exactly on the line here. I'm going to go a little bit outside of the line to make the letters a little bigger. If you trace exactly on the line here, when you cut it, these letters are going to be smaller. So just use the letters as a guide and start to trace. And I want to, hopefully my hand is not in the way either. As I just start to push, basically like I'm drawing this onto the fondant. Pressing hard enough so it transfers, but not too hard that you poke holes through the paper into the fondant. Okay, when you're done, peel that off. The name is imprinted onto the fondant. And as always, I wet a paper towel and I fold it in half a couple times, and that way I can keep cleaning off my X-Acto knife as it starts to get sticky from the fondant. So take your X-Acto knife and cut the name out of the fondant. And what I also like to do is I like to cut the inside, the tiny pieces, like the inside of the E and the L and the H, before I cut the whole word out. So it's easier to cut the smaller pieces like this when the name is not cut out yet. Because if you cut the name out and then try to cut these little pieces, it just makes it a little more difficult. So when I remove these little pieces, I'm going to take my Dresden tool, either the pointy side or the flat side, whatever I feel like works best, and just smooth down the rough edges that happen when you use your X-Acto knife. And just repeat the process to cut the whole name out. And then when you're done, I kind of just peel away the fondant from the name, trying to make sure you don't mess up the letters. The edges are still jagged on this, so I want to smooth it out. And the way I do that, a lot of times I flip it over. I don't know if you could see this, but there's jagged edges. I flip the name over because underneath usually looks the worst. So I want to take my fingers and start to smooth out any jagged edges. If your fingers are too big, and mine are with my huge man hands, I will take the edge of this brush and try to just smooth down the jagged edges that are sticking up. So I'm going to do that down here, but I just wanted to bring it a little closer so you could see what I was doing. Then I'm going to flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm going to take my little handy tip container, and I need to make the dot for the eye in Michelle. I'll use a 6. This is a number 6 tip. Just cutting a hole out of fondant. A little circle out of fondant that I can use. There it is. I'm going to take the name, put it on top, and then basically just realign the name so it is in the correct shape. And then I'm going to set this aside so it can dry for about 10 to 15 minutes before I add the gold. I have this Rollcom Super Gold, which I will link below. It gives a beautiful gold sheen to the fondant. And I have some vanilla extract, not vanilla, lemon extract. And a paintbrush that I really need to get a new one. I don't know what's going on here. I always use this paintbrush for this process. So I'm gonna take a little bit of the gold. Whoa! I kind of just take the lid and tap it on the side so I don't get too much coming out. Close the lid and add a little bit of lemon extract. Not too much. You would kind of make it like a paint. So this is still a little too thick. I'll add a little more. And it does smell delicious, by the way, with all the lemon. But anywho, I will take my name and start to, it's going to be hard to just paint it on without it moving all over the place. So I kind of just tap it on. As the paper underneath gets wet, it will hold the name in place a little better. And you want to make sure that you cover not only the front, but the very tops of the letters and underneath, you know, so you want to get in the little holes here, everywhere around. You want to make sure it's all covered in gold. And then I'll turn it over and make sure that I didn't miss any spots looking from the top. There's parts up here that I didn't get. The reason I use lemon extract is because the lemon extract evaporates very quickly and it dries fast. You can also use vodka. The vodka does evaporate, but it takes a little longer for it to dry. And that looks like it's a pretty good coating on there. Sometimes I will let it dry and then put on another coat. But this looks like it's pretty good. And then I'm just gonna let this dry for another 5 to 10 minutes before I put it on the brown background. And now to put this on a background, I have a piece of brown fondant that I rolled out really thin, also mixed with a little bit of Tylose powder so it's easy to work with. Now the gold can get a little bit messy, so you want to be precise with it, or as precise as you can. It's going to get, like, sometimes the gold just transfers like onto your fingers and stuff. So it is what it is with this. But I'm going to take this and slowly put it on top of this brown piece of fondant, trying not to make a mess. Now I have my paintbrush and a little bit of water. So, as I always say, a little bit goes a long way with the water. If you put too much water underneath the name, it's going to ooze out onto the side and make your fondant wet. So a lot of times I'll wet the paintbrush and dab it off on the paper towel. So I'm going to try to keep the shape as best as I can. And the way I've found is easiest to do that is I'm going to lift up pieces of the letter, wipe it with the wet paintbrush, and pat it back down onto the fondant. And I'm going to go around the whole name and do that, re-wetting my brush as needed, dabbing it off, and repeating the process so I can get this whole thing stuck to the brown fondant. And then I want to take my X-Acto knife, keep wiping it off on the paper towel to make sure it's clean. I want to cut a border around the name, trying to keep it the same thickness the whole way around. And again, peeling the fondant away. And like I did before, just smoothing out the edges with my finger. And voila, so easy and simple and pretty and beautiful. So here you go. Here is your beautiful gold name with your brown background ready to go on your cake or whatever color that you decided. Whoa, oh my gosh, where did that come from? Or whatever color that you decided to use. Rollcom does make a bunch of different colors. I currently use gold, silver, and rose gold the most. I haven't gotten any of the other ones yet, but I'm sure there will come a time where I get the other colors. So, a couple things about this. You want to try to make the fondant the color of that you're going to be painting it. So with gold, I put it on light yellow fondant. With silver, you're going to put it on light gray. Right? Do you see what I'm doing here? Rose gold, I did kind of like a light pinkish color. So that way it makes the color a little easier to show as you're painting it on. I hope that makes sense. What else? The gold can get a little messy. If you find that you painted on a little too much gold and it's really powdery, before I put it on the background, I would take a paintbrush as it's still like sitting on that piece of paper and just wipe away some of the gold. Because if you put too much on, as it dries, it'll look like you can just like blow the gold off. Does that make sense? It's like a little powdery. So I would just take the brush and wipe each letter to get rid of some of the excess gold. Be careful though, because as you touch it, it does transfer. It does stick to your fingers, and if it's stuck to your finger and you touch a piece of fondant, it'll stick to the fondant. A way to get that off, if you do get some gold on fondant or a buttercream that you don't want there, get a little bit of vodka on a paintbrush or a paper towel and take the vodka and wipe that off, and it should come off right away. Also, I'm going to be putting this on a 6-inch cake. I'm not ready to use it yet. So I have a 6-inch cake dummy here, and I am going to, oh geez, let it dry on this dummy so it holds the shape here. Anytime that I do a decoration like this and I'm not ready to put it on the cake right away, I want it to dry with a shape to it, that way it's not flat. If it dries flat and you try to put it on the side of the cake, it's not going to work, because as you push it on the side of the cake, it'll crack. I hope that makes sense. And I know I always say I hope that makes sense, but everything makes sense in my head, and then when I talk, it doesn't sound like I want it to. So I think that's it. I can't really think of anything else I need to say about this. If you have any questions, leave it below and I will get back to you as soon as I can. And like always, please like this video if you liked it. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Share it with all the people that you think that this is so amazing and you want to show everyone how to cut names out of cakes. That was a little excess, right? That was a little extra. Like, it's not the best video ever, but it is pretty cool. I must say so. You can follow me on social media. I am on Facebook, Instagram, and I have my website. I will link all of that below. And I didn't mess up when I said that part. I'm so excited. So, I guess that's it for now, and I will see you on the next one. Bye! I really need to come up with a new ending. Except for just bye. I'll try to think of that.